But anyways, obviously investigating this, and I'm not going to let it go, okay? You're not going to emotionally use some jujitsu, and I'm referring here to Roy or Rob McCoy, who says, I'm Charlie's pastor, and here's the truth, or whatever it is, to look the other way right now, okay? You're not going to tell me that I have to feel too bad to investigate who shot my friend in front of my face.
When mourning becomes a battleground. In the wake of Charlie Kirk's shocking death, an unexpected war of words has erupted that threatens to overshadow the young activist's remarkable legacy. While America grapples with the loss of the 31-year-old conservative firebrand, two prominent figures in his inner circle have engaged in a public clash that has stunned observers and divided the movement he built. The drama centers on Candace Owens, the polarizing media personality, and Pastor Rob McCoy, Kirk's longtime spiritual advisor and business partner in Turning Point Faith. What started as McCoy's gentle pastoral correction has escalated into a full-scale confrontation that exposes deep fissures in the conservative coalition. McCoy's initial intervention came as Owens began promoting elaborate theories about Kirk's September 11th shooting at Utah Valley University. The pastor's statement was measured but firm, reminding Owens of Kirk's loyalty to her despite their differences. Charlie never entertained gossip about Candace, McCoy emphasized, before delivering his central plea wrapped in scripture. A friend loves at all times. The rebuke struck a nerve. Rather than retreat, Owens doubled down with characteristic defiance, launching a counterattack that questioned McCoy's motives and integrity. Her response painted the pastor as complicit in alleged wrongs against Kirk, while promoting theories of federal involvement that have found little support among investigators or Kirk's other associates. The escalation has created an uncomfortable spectacle for conservative Christians watching two trusted voices tear into each other while Kirk's body lies in repose. McCoy's subsequent statement abandoned his earlier restraint, suggesting the pastor's patience had finally snapped under the weight of Owens' accusations. What emerges from this clash is more than personal animosity, it's a fundamental disagreement about how public figures should respond to tragedy, how conspiracy theories take root in grief, and whether loyalty to the deceased requires silence about uncomfortable truths or vocal defense against harmful speculation. As the FBI continues its investigation into Kirk's death, this subsidiary battle raises questions about who truly speaks for his memory and whether the movement he inspired can survive the forces now pulling it apart.
I want to say to this new flex operation mocking pastor, regarding which, by the way, the first time they went after Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, a source told me, and I would love to get this confirmed, I'm going to find this out, that $150 million was spent on that, and it came from Bibi Netanyahu. I would like to figure out if that's true. But anyways, obviously investigating this, and I'm not going to let it go, okay? You're not going to emotionally use some jujitsu, and I'm referring here to Roy or Rob McCoy, who says, I'm Charlie's pastor, and here's the truth, or whatever it is, to look the other way right now, okay? You're not going to tell me that I have to feel too bad to investigate who shot my friend in front of my face. So stop the nonsense. This is what Charlie's pastor passed around to all of the people that were intimidating Charlie leading up to his death. It's funny that Charlie's pastor couldn't find his voice when Bibi Netanyahu was lying about Charlie. Here's pastor, you know what he's saying are lies. No, he didn't find his voice saying anything about Bibi Netanyahu. Candace investigating things? Yeah, that's got to stop. Here's what he wrote, okay? What's his name? Rob McCoy. He wrote, Charlie Kirk was my friend and I was his pastor. I want to simply say this regarding Candace Owens. Charlie Kirk was a friend to Candace and never publicly spoke poorly of her, though he disagreed with her. He never operated nor entertained gossip or innuendo concerning Candace. My only comment I offer regarding Candace is this. I only wish at this tragic time of mourning, she would be the friend to Charlie Kirk that he was to her. He would never have treated Candace or her family in such a way had God forbid this tragedy been hers. A friend loves at all times, and he drops a biblical proverb. Now, let me say this, okay? I hope that Charlie would have been the sort of friend that I'm being, okay? He would have never, why? Why wouldn't Charlie Kirk have investigated if I had been killed and we were being so obviously lied to? I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. I think Charlie was a real friend and he would not have dropped it. He would not have let it go. Least of all, because he was being emotionally manipulated by a guy who curiously kept his mouth shut when Bibi lied. You knew, if you were really his close friend and pastor, how he was feeling about Bibi Netanyahu. You knew, if you're his close friend and pastor, exactly the names of everybody who was intimidating him and how poorly they are misrepresenting the things that he believed. So why don't you focus on being more honest as a pastor and giving as much information as you can possibly provide so that we can continue this investigation? If you can't do this, I'm going to have to ask for your silence. Okay? Be quiet. I mean that.
The timing couldn't be more heartbreaking. As Charlie Kirk's family prepares for what should be their most private moment of grief, laying their beloved son, husband, and friend to rest, they instead find themselves witnesses to a public spectacle that threatens to overshadow their farewell. This isn't some distant social media drama playing out in the background. This confrontation between Candace Owens and Pastor Rob McCoy is unfolding in real time, casting a shadow over the funeral preparations and adding another layer of anguish to an already unbearable situation. Owens has appointed herself the unofficial investigator of Kirk's death, positioning her theories and suspicions above those of federal agents, Kirk's professional colleagues, and even his spiritual community. Her self-proclaimed mission to uncover what she sees as a vast conspiracy has become an obsession that now intrudes upon sacred space, the church where Kirk worshipped, and the family's right to grieve without distraction. In her fierce rebuttal to McCoy's plea for restraint, Owens claimed the moral high ground of friendship itself. She declared that Kirk would have done the same for her, would have questioned and investigated if their roles were reversed. With this assertion, she transformed McCoy's pastoral intervention from a call for respect into what she framed as a test of loyalty, forcing the grieving community to choose sides on the eve of their darkest hour. But McCoy's response revealed the heart of a seasoned pastor who understood that sometimes the most powerful statements come wrapped in silence and scripture. Rather than escalate with anger or point-by-point refutations, he returned to Instagram with a fundamentally different approach. His words carried no heat, no defensiveness, only the quiet authority of ancient wisdom. Drawing from Ecclesiastes, McCoy chose to let biblical truth speak where human argument had failed, offering his community something Owens' theories could not: the peace that comes from trusting in purposes beyond our understanding, even in the midst of inexplicable loss. Ecclesiastes 3:1-4. Everything has a time to everything. There was a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. Everybody wants me to comment on what Charlie's friend Candace has said and what Charlie's friend Tucker has said. So this is what I will say. I will be happy to share what I know about the issues being raised. However, not now. It is not the time nor the season. We as Christians are commanded to weep with those who weep. May we all make these next few days solemn, selfless, and respectful, and not add anything to his family's sadness until they've had the chance to bury him. When I was a mayor, prom of Thousand Oaks, California, our city suffered a mass shooting of 12 of our young people by a gunman in a country western dance hall. Immediately following the shooting, organizations across the country descended upon our city to profit from our grief. We shut them down in order to allow all 12 families in an entire city to grieve and say goodbye. After they were all lovingly and tenderly buried, we immediately engaged all concerns and controversies. I am hoping and asking that we do this for Charlie's family. Blessings, Pastor Rob McCoy. The divergence between these two approaches reveals something fundamental about how we respond to loss, and what we believe about truth, timing, and trust. Candace Owens has chosen the path of the investigator, convinced that uncovering what she perceives as conspiracy is not just her right, but her duty as Charlie Kirk's friend. In her view, asking questions and demanding answers represents the highest form of loyalty, even when those questions implicate Kirk's own spiritual shepherd. To remain silent, she suggests, would be betrayal. Pastor Rob McCoy has chosen a different path entirely. Rather than engage in public combat, he's embraced the posture of a shepherd protecting his flock. His calls for dignity and reverence aren't requests for cover-up, they're pleas for basic human decency in the face of death. He's asking for space, for breath, for the family to have what every family deserves, the chance to say goodbye without the world watching and arguing overhead. Yet Owens interprets this restraint through a lens of suspicion. To her, McCoy's silence reads as complicity, his patience as manipulation, his pastoral care as weakness masquerading as wisdom. The tension raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of grief itself. Does demanding immediate answers from a grieving pastor reflect spiritual fruit, love, patience, gentleness, self-control? Or does it reveal something else, the collision of public persona with private pain, the confusion of activism with mourning, the dangerous mixture of righteousness and pride? Scripture offers perspective that transcends both positions. Isaiah 8:12 warns against seeing conspiracy in every shadow. Do not call conspiracy everything these people call a conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear. The Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. The passage suggests that sometimes our quest for answers becomes its own form of idolatry, trusting our ability to uncover truth more than we trust God's sovereignty over what remains hidden. McCoy calls for calm in chaos. Owens calls for investigation in grief. Two spirits, two approaches, two visions of what faithfulness looks like when tragedy strikes close to home. Between them stands something precious and fragile, a family trying to bury their son, a Christian community fractured over competing loyalties, and Charlie Kirk's legacy itself, now contested ground in a battle he never chose and cannot arbitrate. The question before us isn't simply who's right and who's wrong. It's deeper. What does love require when certainty eludes us? What does friendship demand when our friend can no longer speak for himself? And when should the search for answers yield to the sacred work of saying goodbye? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the real tensions that every community faces when public tragedy intersects with private grief, when conspiracy theories compete with pastoral care, and when loyalty itself becomes weaponized in service of opposing visions. The conflict between Owens and McCoy will likely continue, perhaps intensify. But the family's need for peace, for closure, for the dignity of burial, that remains unchanged, regardless of who claims to speak for Charlie's memory or who demands the final word on his death. In the end, perhaps the most faithful response isn't to choose sides at all, but to recognize that some mysteries outlast our need for answers, and some griefs deserve protection from the very investigations we believe honor them.